Oh, okay.
Andrew, that's the first time I ever heard you said that.
Or
You got your lunch nice and early, you get to eat before the meeting
That's a
starts.
good idea.
See?
I hate gulping down while.
It's a good thing
oh,
to have a
because
good day.
Yeah.
It doesn't even feel like it, so honestly. I don't know, maybe because I did a short house this year.
Well, I know I'll be ready for the barbecue season. Here I come.
Join Zoom button. Oh.
Short house where?
Jersey.
Yeah, it's like a third.
I used to do Hamptons, but then we downgraded and then I had to do
Oh, yeah.
Point Pleasant, but. even those-
They go to Orchard Beach.
Orchard Beach, no, you do not go to Orchard Beach. I don't go to Orchard Beach. That's all the way in the Bronx, you know I don't.
All the way?
Yeah, it's
That far?
I don't want, I live,
I know where you live.
okay, so that's far for the.
So you can go to Bergen Beach.
You know, I wish we, that's my
Bergen Beach is a
neighborhood.
private beach.
It is a private beach, it's not a beach anymore,
and you
although,
can't go to Manhattan Beach, Kingsborough, because they're still gonna be closed.
yeah, so I go to Coney Island, like I go in Seagate, I have friends that live in Seagate, live in a private
I know
facility.
I know
You
what
have
it's
friends?
I have friends who are members of Seagate, so I can use their beach, I can use their pool, which is nice.
advantage too.
Yeah.
Since I know Community Board 13, because I'm next door to the.
Oh, sorry. That's me, right?
That's your cue.
Where is that?
Alrighty.
Seagate.
Oh, it's Seagate, I got you. Oh, it's nice.
Because you see,
I wanted to.
I live in
become a
Community
member,
Board
but we
15.
keep both of these ones all muted, but unmuted. For
So
about-
mute this one.
what I do is
Like,
Give
no,
me
you
1
can
second.
unmute it, but keep the sound on.
I have a balcony, so you know, I can see her.
Yeah, it's on.
From my window.
But leave,
Bradley's place.
but you want me to leave it, the mute, okay? On, the computer, the sound on the computer is not on.
Yeah.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound. Enter your participant ID followed by pound. Otherwise, just press pound to continue.
Now what do you feel?
Hey, Bert.
You are in the meeting now. There are 4 participants in the meeting. This meeting is being recorded. You are muted. You can mute or unmute yourself by pressing star.
Andrew, wait 2 minutes.
I can't wait 2 minutes.
Can I just give you, well, it's a damn train.
Hi, everybody. Before we get started, we just want to go over the rules of the road, as it were. As a reminder, Judy.
I'm just talking to Andrew.
I know, but it's, as a reminder, when we're going to have 2 presentations today, we're going to ask that, again, that we're going to call on members first, and then we're going to have a discussion with members, both in the room and on Zoom, and then we're going to ask for comments from non-members, and we will take questions and comments that way as well. Okay, so just want to make sure that we have, we know that there will be questions and input from, on all of our topics, so appreciate your consideration, participation, and thoughtfulness. Thank you.
Okay, welcome to our May Transit Riders Council meeting. I might add that we should all be congratulating Bradley. This is his first meeting as Associate Director of the BCAC.
Oh, my goodness, that's lucky.
That's why I think he was coming, but it's here.
Moving on up.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Bradley. Little Bradley's grown up.
Yet he remains the same height, so go now.
I knew you were gonna say that answer.
I couldn't help it. Let's get approval of today's agenda. May we have it?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. The minutes, any corrections, additions, or may we have a motion to approve the minutes as submitted?
Second.
Great. All right, so we have a bunch of things to talk about. First of all, as far as ridership goes, the trends are looking.
People signing on.
Anyway, the ridership trends look pretty good. They had begun to plateau. They are once again on the upswing. We had a day last week with 3.6 million subway riders, which is the highest since well before the pandemic. Apparently, Thursdays look like the real heavy days on the system. I guess a lot of folks are getting Fridays off if they're working remotely or what have you. Weekends look also very good because people are using discretionary travel and to get out and go places and take advantage of everything that New York and the region has to offer, which is a good sign because they're not made to do that by reasons for work. They're choosing to do that because they know it's the fastest and best way to get around. So those are good signs. Obviously, we have a real dark cloud since we last met, the Q train tragedy. Just unthinkable what Mr. Abdullah did to Mr. Enriquez on a morning when Mr. Enriquez was on the Q train going to Manhattan to have brunch with some friends. It's just unthinkable. We got to get guns out of people's hands. But once again, the cameras worked, and Mr. Abdullah knew that and surrendered himself. Unfortunately, he should have done that long before he committed this heinous act, but he did not. And so another family is deprived, and people are once again considering, is it safe to ride the trains or not? Considering the numbers of folks that are riding the trains, and thankfully, these incidents are not happening every day. They're happening far too often, but they're not happening every day. We believe that there's safety in numbers, and the more good people riding the trains, the harder it is to commit some of these atrocities. And so we encourage everybody to get out and ride. And I have noticed that there appears to be, and this is not scientific, but there appears to be fewer homeless living on the trains. There are some still in stations. I was told that many have taken the advantage of, once they have been given the opportunity for help, actually undertaking that help and staying in services until they feel they're ready to leave, or accepting housing. So that is one bright spot. It appears that the homeless are getting the help they need. It's not safe living in the subway. You may have heard yesterday a track intrusion report was issued after the MTA board meeting, so we didn't know anything about it, but the numbers in the track intrusion show that suicide attempts are up 50% through the first quarter, and that accounts for some of the track intrusion, people choosing to do away with themselves. There's been a 20% increase in track intrusions between 2019 and 2021. In April, there was a decrease in track intrusions, so that is good. One of the experimental courses of action the MTA and others are going to take is the installation of blue lighting in various places. Apparently, that's a calming influence and causes people to think twice before attempting suicide. Yes, and the commuter rails are utilizing that as well. So you will see blue lights being installed in various places. Hopefully there will be counseling, and I know that there was a recent suicide off of the Verrazano Bridge, and it's just terrible. When people reach that point in their lives where they must do that, we've got to do something about it. We've got to get them services. We've got to get them counseling. There will be some really well-tried and obviously successfully in other systems, track intrusion software and detection devices installed. It's not soon enough for me. We've been talking about this since I got on the board, but it's coming. It's a shame it took various suicides and homeless people being hit by trains and what have you, that it's come to this point. But almost 20 years ago, we were talking about track intrusion systems installed in the subway. So we hope that comes sooner rather than later. The police have given statistics about crime in the system. It is up. We knew that it was up. What we don't know is whether it's now, with the rising ridership, if it's up per capita or if it's just up per numbers. And we would like to find that out. With ever-increasing ridership, the numbers would appear to be going down slightly, but we still would like to have those facts and figures, and I will be asking Chief Wilcox for the answers to that. He's really forthcoming with everything we ask for. So we'll find that out. Fare evasion continues to be a real scourge and a real drag on the system. Numbers continue to rise. You've heard the chairman speak of 1 in 3 bus riders not paying. Subway rides, it's really high too. I ride a lot and I cannot take trips without seeing people beat the fare. All walks of life, all methods of beating it, whether you're waiting 3 or 4 trains for someone to finally exit through the slam gate, to families sending their kids under the turnstiles to open the slam gate so they can all enter, to people selling swipes at Sutphin Archer where tourists come and that's their first view of New York City, which is not great. And Chief Wilcox is well aware of the issues at Parsons Archer and Sutphin Archer and what has to be done there. You know, I saw somebody beating the fare the other day and I said, you're going to see service cuts if you keep doing that. We don't want to see service cuts or fare hikes or any of the combination thereof. We are facing a fiscal cliff in a couple of years. Everybody is looking at possible options to deal with that fiscal cliff. Mostly, we're looking at new, sustainable, recurring sources of revenue because, like police, fire, sanitation, transportation is an essential service and needs to be treated as such and needs to be dealt that way in the state and city budgets. I know that the chairman is looking and talking to state officials. Any opportunity we have to talk to local and state officials to get them to realize this is an essential service and was a lifesaver during the heart of COVID when it got essential workers to and from work and home. We need to make sure this is treated that way or we're going to have a real fiscal cliff. The federal dollars that we've gotten are running out and will run out. And, you know, we carry 40% of the transit riders in the country. We receive 16% of the federal funding. That is a situation that cannot continue, and we need to keep hammering that home. Queens Bus Redesign, which will be the feature of today, is very timely that we're having this today. As far as the Bronx Bus Redesign, when it was first submitted, and I attended many of those sessions, there were some really bad ideas. To their credit, the MTA heard the discussions on those and redid it. They reformulated the Bronx Bus Redesign. And now folks who cannot negotiate the steep hills that the Bronx has will get their routes without having to traverse those hills. The original Bronx Bus Redesign had people walking up and down steep hills to get to the same routes that now have no hills. So it was ridiculous. We hope that they heard all of the contributions and suggestions at the various Queens Bus Redesign public hearings and are still listening. There was, I recall, some really bad ideas in there, and I think I've heard from many people that it's better. We will hear today what some of those suggestions and ramifications are, and hopefully it too will be a lot better. I do know that there is a spacing out of bus stops, as there was in the Bronx Bus Redesign, and there was in Staten Island, and not everybody is cool with that. There may be some additional distances, and we have to see if there's any kind of senior centers or things like that that are being affected by the loss of stops. So we'll learn a lot more after today. We also got an update on many of the major capital programs the MTA is doing. Long Island Railroad third track is on schedule. Much of it will be put into effect by the end of 2022. That's going to make a big difference to Long Islanders. Reverse commuting, East Side access, which is also going to be live by the end of this year. Substantial completion actually remains a few months into 2023, but nevertheless, for the majority of riders, you're going to see all of the improvements by the end of '22, and that's exciting.
And we'll get a presentation, from Kathy Rinaldi at our PCAC meeting next week.
Right.
On East Side Access
Yeah.
Service Plan.
That's great. I'm anxious to hear the service plan. I've always wondered if people would wait an extra hour to take a train to the east side, if they had a train leaving to the west side, and the trip between terminals is 15, 20 minutes at the worst. So, we'll see. Many people raised that issue at the meeting yesterday about what service plan and what people are likely to do. Second Avenue continues to move forward with acquisitions. The board approved various acquisitions so that the tunneling and routing of the Second Avenue Phase 2 up to 125th Street will proceed, and it is proceeding. So that work is ongoing. Cooperation with Amtrak has reached a new high, apparently, both for East Side Access and Penn Access. There's a lot of track work that needs to be done for Penn Access along the Amtrak route in the Bronx, so that those trains, Gate Bridge route, that work is continuing, and Amtrak, all of a sudden, is being very cooperative, so that's great. Because we need Amtrak for both East Side Access and Penn Access. The chairman mentioned that when East Side Access begins, there will be fewer trains, fewer MTA trains in Penn Station. A few folks asked what's the upshot of that? Does that mean less service? It actually, until Penn Access starts rolling in, it will mean less MTA trains in Penn Station. But then the discussion once again took place about Hudson Line access to Penn Station. And the chairman mentioned, C&D President Torres Springer, that for Metro North Hudson Line to come down the west side like Amtrak trains do, there needs to be some track work done between the Spuyten Duyvil Bridge up there and the heart of the Amtrak right-of-way coming under the west side for Hudson trains to be able to use that. So we're going to watch. Several board members were very interested in the possibility of Hudson Line service into Penn Station, and I believe that will eventually happen. What we don't know is what Penn Station is going to look like. How many tracks there'll be, if the acquisition of properties along 31st Street is going to take place, if there'll be lawsuits to tie that up forever. We don't know a lot about what's going to happen. That relies on Governor Hochul and Tornado and a whole bunch of others to see what's going to happen with Penn Station. And ESD, obviously. Empire State Development is going to be a big piece of that, and so stay tuned on that one. You have all seen the news reports, I'm sure, of the new entrance to the Times Square station. I went and visited it. There is more of Nick Cave's beautiful artwork there. It is so obvious where that entrance is when you're in Times Square, unlike the other one where you sort of needed to hire a detective to find it for you. It was hidden next to a low-rise building. It was very narrow stairway, and after you got down it, you had to walk completely around track 4 to get into the heart of Times Square. This entrance puts you smack in the middle of all of the trains, the shuttle, the N, the Q, the R, the W, the 1, the 2, and the 3. It's a great entrance. You can see it from a distance, so there's just no question about it. Also, we have the issue of the outage of some escalators at the 181st Street A train stop. Yes, there is elevator service at the 184th Street Fort Washington Avenue entrance, but that is 3 blocks, it's up a hill, and not everybody can make it. So we need to get the escalators repaired at 181st Street as quickly as we can. The estimate of 6 months it's just awful. It's a long time. Do you have something to say on that, Trudy?
No, I have on a couple of things, but I wait until your report is over.
Okay, let me see how much more I have.
It looks like that's your last item.
That's pretty much it for my report. Go ahead, Trudy.
Okay, so on 2 items in your report. First of all, on Second Avenue, they still haven't opened. I keep on getting calls for the Community Information Center, which is something that is so wonderful for all the people who keep on, well, it's also wonderful for me, of all the people who keep on calling me and saying what's doing with those, the phase 2, or they don't know what to call it, the rest of the Second Avenue. So if you could make a note of that, I have brought it up already twice, and if you could make a note
Absolutely.
when it is opening, and I don't know if it's the same people who were doing it for phase 1, because they were great.
They were great,
then
and
if
I knew one
can-
of them.
And then if I can be in touch with one, if you can give me contact information.
I will absolutely find out.
Thank you, okay, that's on that.
It was on 125th Street,
It was right on 125th and between
Park
Second and.
Avenue.
Oh, it was.
It was near, yeah, it was near the,
Oh,
Metro North.
between Lex and Park, yeah, I'm sorry, I lose track of it. It was there. Anyway, that's number 1. Number 2, I just wanted to bring to everybody's attention that Nick Pace, there was a whole feature about him in the Times as a finally rediscovered artist, and I think it was in the Times, in the weekend Times, in the culture section, not in anything else. And then also, which brings me to something, and I've asked this before, and Lisa, I don't know who does it, but I get a lot of clips because I have my phone, but set for anything that has MTA, but I sometimes miss things. Could you please forward, I don't know if everybody wants them, but I would ask that, I know you get the clips, Andrew, you get the clips, because I've nudged you about it enough. But if we could do it, I'm sure other people would like to see some of what's in the.
Do you don't get the clips from the MTA?
I don't know. No, I don't. They I sent to you, and then you have to send it to.
No, that we can have them sent directly from.
I'll
Request
send it
that
if you
directly.
could. I would, and I don't know if anybody else here, because it's interesting,
Yeah.
That's the way I learn about a lot of things that are
Sure.
going on, so I don't have to nudge you all the time.
Right, I'm sorry, I was under the impression that you were getting.
No, I thought I had brought it up before, but if I didn't, I'm bringing it up
Okay.
now.
We'll reach out to
And I don't
members
know,
to
as I
see who.
said, I don't know if anybody else
to get
here
them.
would like to.
We'll get them, no problem.
It's a lot of reading, let me tell you that in
Oh,
advance.
I know, and
Wow.
how many times have I said, I just saw it in the paper.
I have a
3
long
days
ride,
ago.
and I can almost get to all of them if I don't read them all.
Yeah, well,
If I read one in every category.
I would not read
Perhaps you
all
should
of
move
them.
to
It's
Wakefield
just that sometimes, if somebody calls me up and says, did you see? And I go,
All right, and anything else? Karen, your hand was up, sure.
Yeah, there are a couple of things that you mentioned. So one of them was about safety. Of course, everyone's, talking about speeds and real safety in the subway. We had a meeting with Riders Alliance last week, and we were wondering whether or not they should put out a statement. And I said, you know what, people are questioning, their choice of commute, and so it makes sense to say something. And just reminding people that we're in tumultuous times throughout the U.S., throughout the world, and there are unpleasant things happening everywhere. And we talked about this last month, that things that happen in the subway appear to be amplified in the media. And so, it's as safe as anywhere else at any given time. And just reminding that, not everyone has the option of not taking transit. And so, for some people, it's a privilege, and some people, it's the only option. And that we need to make, as you mentioned, safe for the people who have taken us through the pandemic. On the topic of fare evasion, believe it or not, it's very divisive.
So at, the MTA committee and board meetings, we've been testifying, to that fact about, in fact, we called for a national transit safety summit, because it's not just a New York issue.
Yeah.
And that we should bring together the best minds, of everybody nationally to weigh in. And in fact, we made today's clip. But that's something that, I was at a conference last week, and this transit crime, even though it is 2% of the rest of the crime in New York, it does get amplified when it's underground.
Yeah.
But it is, something that we think should be, and I think the MTA recognizes needs to be, raised, elevated, and the mayor certainly, and the governor as well.
And something you said that I think was very important, that the services, we came out of, we're still in the pandemic, but, there are people who have not weathered it as well, and we're seeing the results of that. And, one of the things that we're saying is that when we do the budget, we have to make sure those services are included in the budget. It's tantamount to our safety, in the city and elsewhere.
Technically, because the transit system is a contained area versus the streets at large,
Yeah.
you should be able to make this contained area safer than the streets at large.
If you take care of those problems.
If you take
Well,
care of it.
the other thing, if I could
That's
speak
it.
as
I'm
a
sorry, I'm
officer,
finished.
and I just wanted to
I'm
answer
not
something.
done, I'm sorry.
On that matter, though, can I just, no, okay, I'll wait till you're through and then I'll respond.
And so the whole fare evasion, that's also a very divisive issue. There are people that are like, there are other important things, why is the MTA wondering about that? And so I guess, as we discuss fare evasion, we really need to show how it hurts us all, not just about, but just the different ways. It's not apparent to everyone, so.
And one of the things about fare evasion that's technically not necessarily about fare evasion is Chief Wilcox mentioned in the last 2 weeks, when they've stopped some people for fare evasion, they've recovered loaded guns and some not so small ones either, which is why this is really important. Stop this stuff at the turnstiles.
Right, so it's more than just fare evasion,
Sure
it's
is.
quality of life. I want to report that I have seen increased police presence. I saw them at Locust Manor Railroad Station today. I was like, wow, it's the first time I've ever seen police at the railroad, so that was, very interesting.
Are they paying attention?
Yeah.
That's another matter.
They're on their cell phone.
Well, whether or not people feel, that we need police or not police, for many people, just seeing them, it does a lot.
Does a lot.
They're on their cell phones and
And
chatting.
the other thing I wanted to mention is, I took a picture, I'll have to find it and show, that people are coming on with scooters and bikes, as I mentioned on the railroad, and there was a picture I took 2 weeks ago, someone, that seats where they have the seats that go down for.
The accessible seating.
Yes.
Yeah.
They had a bike, like sideways on the floor, no one could sit, and I thought when the conductor came, he would say something, he just like, kind of jumped around it.
We're gonna talk about that in a bit, and please send me the picture.
That I
We
will
ha-
do.
We have also our Queen Bus
Thank you very
Redesign at 12:30. Thank you, Karen, that's
Okay.
important.
Andrew,
Yes.
can I just say something to what Karen said? Karen, I don't know if you know, but I used to be, at that time they called it PR, but
Yeah.
now we call it communications. And I've been doing this for a long time, and it is always, they will magnify, first of all, they will always magnify negative things. As an editor of, and more than one editor of major New York, well, now we don't have too many left, but anyway, major New York publications said to me, just remember, good news does not sell newspapers. And we are in the business of selling newspapers because the more we sell, the more we can get for our advertising, and we live on advertising. So that's just a little lesson which I taught, whenever I teach communications, I tell them that.
Fair enough.
That's number one. But number two, the subway has always, or the MTA, subways, buses, has always been the major whipping boy for the media. I mean, it just is, it's been this way since what they call the Holy Roman Empire. Nobody liked Bill Ronan, so that's when it started. That's a little bit of history. No, that's what they called it, seriously.
Thank you.
So I will just tell you that there's nothing, I call a lot of media people at various times, and I say, can't you put, and I tell them about some good, I just do it on my own, even though I'm not technically representing, but they know me. And all I'm telling you is that I hear the same thing in different words. So as much as we would like, and we do get the good news out, I have to say that the MTA, I don't know what they call it these days, Andrew, communications department or outreach or whatever, and there are like 5 people doing the same thing, and they get everything out. And then it's just a media, both not only print, but if you look.
Oh, I'm sorry, I have to move this along.
I just wanted to tell something
waiting.
else. Look at local news once in a while, and not only about the subways, but always see what the lead story is. It's either murder, fire, something else terrible. It's always a negative story.
Chris, and then we're going to move on to our speakers.
Let me
Yes.
just see, Kate, are you guys ready?
We are. Francisca is going to be your presenter, so she'll need some screen sharing privileges, and we're ready when you are.
Do you have?
I'm gonna be quick if I can,
Real quick?
if I don't get interrupted. I'm trying to do quick. Two things, Andrew. One, I had mentioned this lots of times about the Q trains, the N train, the D, and the B, when they go over the Manhattan Bridge. Because the problem is the safety, when you have those dancers, you have people acting up, that still needs to be addressed since day one. As well as a lot of these accessible stations, when people are going through the walkers, they have to go through, but then you have to collect, run them over. And I've seen this in Jamaica stations, and that's N Manhattan at 125th Street. It needs to be done as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Lisa, for the record, I mentioned it, that's Annie Debbie's question too, so she can raise, put her hand down.
Obviously, folks, this is what's going on right now in the borough of Queens, the borough that relies the most on bus service, that has the fewest covered square miles of subways coverage of all the boroughs. We won't count Staten Island in on that because they don't have the subways, they have the Staten Island Railway. So bus service is really important. I raised the issue yesterday about, as Bradley has in public testimony, connectivity to subways and commuter rail lines, and I'm told that is part of this. So please, let's hear the latest recommendations on the Queens Bus Redesign.
Sure. Just a couple of notes before Francisca dives in. What we've got for you today is an overview presentation at the borough level. We'll be giving you some examples of what the redesign strategies are, what we've heard from our customers, how we're applying that in this new draft plan. And then we're also in the process of doing 14 public workshops, asking for our communities to let us know what they like about the plan, but also importantly, what they don't like. So this is part of a pretty long process. We have done 11 workshops. We have 3 more to go, and then we'll be doing additional outreach over the summer as needed. So this is just meant to give you all a taste, and I'll share some links in the chat for folks who do ride buses in Queens and may want to go and check out their routes after this presentation. With that, I'll hand it over to Francisca.
Thanks so much, Kate. Hello, everyone. My name is Francisca, and I'm currently one of the planners on the Queens redesign team. As Kate mentioned, this presentation will provide an overview of the new draft plan for Queens. Keep in mind, nothing has been finalized and implementation is TBD, to be determined. There are about 25 slides that I'll be presenting. I'll try to go through them as quickly as possible and concise and clear, so we can just get to questions folks may have. So let's start with a quick recap of the project. In April 2019, the project was launched. September 2019, the existing conditions report was released. December 2019, the original draft plan was released. And then January to March 2020, extensive public outreach events were held throughout Queens. March 2020 to August 2021, due to the pandemic, we were forced to be put on pause. August 2021, the official announcement restarting the bus network redesign initiative was put out. December 2021, an announcement of the upcoming Queens Bus Network Redesign new draft plan was withdrawn. Originally, the draft plan. And on March 29th, 2022, we released the new draft plan and restarted our public outreach efforts. Once we've finished our outreach and analyzed all public feedback, we will release a proposed final plan, which will be followed by more public outreach, a public hearing, and finally a vote by the MTA's Board of Directors. So why the draft plan? Why the new draft plan, excuse me? From January to March 2020, we completed dozens of public outreach events, including workshops, community board presentation, elected official briefings, and presentations with other stakeholders. We marketed the plan through various means, from handing out brochures to displaying updates on digital screens throughout the systems. Through these efforts, we received over 11,000 comments in 3 months. We have analyzed and summarized these comments into key takeaways from each of the 14 community districts in Queens. This customer feedback was crucial to the development of this plan, the new draft plan. So why even redesign the Queens bus network? The Queens bus network has not kept up with the majority of the growth change Queens has experienced and will continue to see moving forward. Other than minor incremental changes, Queens bus routes have not substantially changed in decades and must evolve to meet the changing needs of bus riders, as we see. As Queens has grown, congestion has worsened, resulting in declining bus speeds, service reliability, and ridership. Just a few stats from 2015 to 2019 pre-pandemic, bus speeds decreased 3.3%, on-time performance decreased 12%, and ridership decreased 5.3%. And this was again from 2015 to 2019. How are we redesigning the bus network? This brings us to our goals and priorities of the Queens redesign. During public outreach, we asked our customers what they would prioritize to make a better bus network. The responses weren't surprising. Our customers wanted reliable service. Basically, they wanted the bus to show up when it's supposed to, faster travel. They want to spend less time waiting for the bus. And once the bus arrives, want to get to their destinations faster. Better connections. They want better connections and expanded access within Queens and other boroughs. Ease of use. Lastly, our customers wanted a system that they can use and easily understand. So here are some of our strategies: streamlining the routes, making them simpler and more direct, improving existing connections and creating new connections to subways, key destinations, and other bus routes, building a better grid network with frequent all-day service, improve stop spacing to speed up travel and improve reliability, improving connections to ADA accessible subway stations, expanding bus priority improvements along with New York City DOT, collaborating with NYPD for traffic enforcement, speeding up the boarding process with Omni, improving the customer experience, Central Business District tolling program, and 2020 to 2024 capital MTA capital program. So simplifying the network, what does simplifying the network look like? So in this example, the proposed Q23 route has fewer turns and diversions than the existing route, which is here in the black dashed line. Straighter routing means less time spending, stopping and waiting to turn at intersections and more time spent moving. Simplifying the network also means less redundant service, so customers know exactly which route to take without having to look at the destination sign for the bus. So for example, the existing Q46 has both a local and a limited stop version. The proposed Q23, which serves a section of the existing 46, would only have one service type, limited. Creating routes with one specific purpose allows customers to know exactly what type of service to expect. So here's some a couple of mock customer commutes that are examples of trip types that would directly benefit from a few of the proposals in the new draft plan. So here's an example of how simplifying the network can help reduce travel times for customers on a newly proposed Q23 limited route. Catalina, who lives in East Elmhurst near 108th Street and Northern Boulevard, has regular physical therapy appointments near Kew Garden subway station. A 4-mile trip is complicated and time consuming. Walk several blocks west of 108th Street to catch the 23. The Q23 makes several turns on local streets before returning back to 108th Street, the street she lives on. A transfer to the Q60 in Forest Hills is then needed to get to Kew Gardens, and overall the trip takes about an hour. The newly proposed Q23 limited route serves the entire length of 108, making trips like Carolina's faster, simpler, and more frequent, and more direct north to south connections. So this would overall have an anticipated travel time reductions of up to 25 minutes. Excuse me. Enhancing connectivity. The need to improve connections was something we regularly heard from our customers. The map on the right shows the newly proposed Q51 Crosstown route on Linden Boulevard. So this would be an all-new proposed route. And this bus service along the section of Linden Boulevard doesn't currently exist, and there is no easy way to travel east to west on the bus in Southeast Queens without going into Jamaica first and making that transfer. This new route fills in the gap in the network and strengthens the bus network grid, creating new connections with dozens of the bus routes and enhancing the reach of the bus network. This creates new travel opportunities and saves travel time. So for example, the proposed Q51 is a great example of how we're proposing to strengthen the interborough service, Queens to Brooklyn travel. Here's an example of how we're improving the service by enhancing connectivity on the proposed Q51. So here's another simple customer commute story we've heard. Jared, who lives near the corner of Guy R. Brewer on Linden Boulevard, just got a new job at the Gateway Center Mall in East New York of Brooklyn. His 6.5 mile commute takes about, in the existing service we have now, 1 hour and 13 minutes. By 2 bus routes. Again, you have to transfer at Jamaica, downtown Jamaica to transfer. The newly proposed Q51 Crosstown on Linden Boulevard would provide direct east to west connectivity to the Gateway Center Mall and could save trips like Jared's up to 25 minutes, avoiding the need to transfer to another bus route in downtown Jamaica. Overall anticipated travel time savings of up to 25 minutes. So improving the frequency. In this plan, all-day frequency means service operating every 10 minutes or better on weekdays from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. This means customers can walk out the door and know that their bus is coming at least 10 minutes or better without looking at a schedule. The map on the right shows our proposed all-day frequent network. So we have the all red routes, limited routes, and most blue routes, crosstown or SBS style routes, would operate all day frequent service. And on another slide, I'll touch on the different service types, so sort of the red, blue, and what all those service types mean. So balancing bus stops. New York City has one of the shortest distances between bus stops of any major city, with an average bus stop spacing of about 805 feet between each stop. Other American cities have stop spacings of about 1,030 feet on average. So their stop spacing is further apart. Each stop removed saves about 20 seconds in travel time. Maintaining stops, our sort of strategy was to maintain stops with heavy ridership that provides key connections and serves community facilities. Have we gotten everything correct? No, we haven't. This is why we're doing outreach, to see if these bus stops, have we missed something? So of course, we've heavily relied on our quantitative data, but we can never dismiss our qualitative data, which is hearing from folks who live in the neighborhood in Queens. So customer commutes, here's another example of how bus stop balancing on a proposed Q84 can improve travel times and reliability. So Sophia, who lives near 120th Ave in Cambria Heights, currently needs to ride the Q84 bus to the subway to commute to Midtown Manhattan. Currently, Sophia's commute takes about 90 minutes one way, estimated 30 minutes on the bus, and she often experiences bus bunching together one after another. With bus stop balancing and proposed Q84 rush route, this is an all-new service type, purple route, Sophia could save roughly 9 minutes on her one-way commute and can expect her bus to arrive at more regular intervals. Round trips, this gives Sophia 18 minutes in her day, more time to stop for coffee, drop the kids off at school, or even to press snooze on her alarm clock. So expanding bus priority. Expanding bus priority can include busways, bus lanes, queue jumps, and other street treatments to speed up service. We're working with our partners at New York City DOT to expand bus priority throughout the borough, focus on 49 corridors that have been identified for additional study. The 24 corridors are in blue, are the primary corridors along the focus areas of downtown Flushing and downtown Jamaica. There are 25 secondary corridors in dark gray, and the yellow corridors are upcoming bus priority projects. So what we've heard and how have we addressed these? As I mentioned earlier in this presentation, we've analyzed and summarized the 11,000 comments we received into key takeaways. Some of these key takeaways were proposed routing changes, connectivity issues, proposed bus stops and schedule changes, and operational issues. So on to introducing the proposed new bus network. Again, this proposed plan has nothing has been finalized and implementation is TBD. So an overview of the proposed local bus network changes. While we're still proposing significant changes overall, this new version of the bus network will look more familiar to the public. So we have 84 existing routes considered, 70 limited or the red routes and or local routes, green, and 4 SBS colored in blue. 74 Queens Division routes, 9 Brooklyn Division routes, and 1 Bronx Division route. 34 local routes are green, 27 are rush routes in purple, 17 limited routes in red, 7 SBS crosstown routes are in blue. In addition to the routing changes, we are also proposing frequency changes across the bus network. Some of these frequency changes are proposed to complement routing changes. Others are proposed to create a better overall all-day frequent grid network that gives customers more freedom to travel across the borough without having to look at a schedule. Additionally, the 4 different proposed route types make it easier for customers to understand how frequent their routes will be based on the color. So here are the different color service type routes. So there are 4 local bus routes in the new bus network, and they're color coded to make it easier for customers to understand how frequent their route would be. 3 of these route types already exist today. The local that connects local neighborhoods. These routes are in green. The limited are the limited serve high demand corridors with frequent service. These are red. These routes are color coded in red. SBS or crosstown routes are high frequency service routes that connect key destinations across longer distances. These routes are in blue. And then the 4th is a new route type called the rush route. These routes are color coded in purple and will connect customers to the outer neighborhoods. So for example, in Cambria Heights, Southeast Queens, to and from the subway where the majority of the customers are going. These routes will have local bus stop spacing in the outer parts of the borough and then provide rush service only stopping at major transfer points or destination on its way to the subway. As I mentioned, most of the proposed rush routes are in Southeast Queens or Northeast Queens as well too. So Express Network will look similar to the existing network with some minor route changes. These routes are color coded by their destination sign. We are also proposing frequency and service band changes to express routes. While some express routes operate near capacity and some trips, many trips are underutilized, especially during the weekday, midday, and weekends. For this reason, we're proposing to reduce service where ridership is at its lowest and maintain service where it's most needed. So in this slide, I'll keep it brief. It's more so how to read a route profile. This is also located on our website as well. So on the left is the first page of how a typical route profile will look, where you have, it's color coded based on the service type. So here we have limited. Underneath here, we have sort of, is it a new route? Is it a route change? Or is there a schedule change? And then in the middle here, we have sort of the summary detailed of the proposed, if there is a proposed change or not. Below this is more so schedule changes if there are any, and spans. So you have what the existing is and what would be the proposed. On the right-hand side here, we have more so a visual of the of the route and any map route changes if there are any. Interboro Express, the MTA has prepared a feasibility study for the Interboro Express, which would be a new transit line connecting Queens and Brooklyn via the existing 4-mile freight corridor. We don't know yet the transit mode or potential stations locations. The IBX would complement, however, the Queens Bus Network redesign, and we expect to begin the environmental review process in early 2023, and we'll be engaging with local communities throughout the process. So how to provide your feedback. Customers are encouraged to let us know what you like about the proposals, as well as things that you don't like and would like to see change in the next iteration of this process, which would be the proposed final plan. There are several ways for you to give your feedback to the project team. Attend one of our virtual workshops. I believe we have a workshop tonight in CB12, and although it may not be your community district, however, you still feel free to attend and have your voice, your questions heard, and we also save all the chat and all questions. Also check out Your Route in Remix. This is a web-based interactive tool, and we can drop the link to those tools here within the chat, where you can view all your proposed routes and stops in detail compared to the existing routes. Now, I just want to touch on something. You won't see any of the schedules or any of the proposed schedules within the remix map itself. This would just simply end stops. I'm sorry, just the schedules. You will only see those on our route profiles. I know that's been a question often that folks have had within the interactive remix tool. And also submit your comments via our project webpage. And again, we can drop that link within this chat here. So here we are. These are our 14 workshops, and we're up to tonight. We have one, CD12, and we have 2 more to go, which will be 13 and 14. And sign up. Let folks know as well too that they can sign up and have any of their questions, comments heard. We've also done on-street engagement. So the Queens team had fanned out to key bus and subway locations around the borough to pass out multilingual brochures and information about the project and encourage riders to participate again in the public workshops. So thank you. I think this is all, and we can jump right into any questions folks may have.
I'm sure we do. Thank you so much, Fran.
Thank you.
Questions?
Andrew?
I'm sorry, hold on. I'm just gonna ask if you wouldn't mind taking down the presentation just so that we can look at everybody and put hands up. Thank you so much. Okay, so now just to go over the protocols again, members first, and then we'll get to the non-members. Thank you.
Chris?
Hi, Fran. Good to see you again. Fran, excuse me. Fran, the one thing that when I'm seeing a lot of with the redesign so far, with some of the buses that I know I mentioned about they're connecting to an accessible train station. We also need to be clear, they're also linking them to the Long Island Railroad stations as well.
Right.
So they're trying to go to the accessibility. That's the one thing a lot of people were getting confused on. So we need to be very clear and very mindful that these are drafts and we need to hear from a lot of people. So far, I have been telling a lot of our accessibility groups, senior groups, to please try to attend or please put their comments in. And that's where we need to do something in that, because what I'm seeing right now, they are linking it to an accessible station, but I'm not hearing enough. Not from the MTA, but from the community in Queens. I'm hearing it in Flushing, but I don't hear enough. We need to really push it up a notch.
Thank you.
To make sure it's all clear information.
Thank you so much.
And I have attended a lot of them, and I will be there tonight at 7:30.
Yep.
Aaron?
Hi, how are you? I have a few questions, and I know you mentioned that you've gone out to various stations and you've spoken to people and handed out flyers. Have the planners also ridden the various buses that they are looking to redesign, and have they ridden them at different times of day to get a feel for the actual commute and, what travel times look like?
Yes, we have. So, you sounded a little low, and maybe that might be on my end, but the question was, have we went out to these actual bus stations and seen, the day-to-day? Is that correct? Have the planners
Right,
on?
you've been in the buses, right? Okay.
Yes, we have done extensive qualitative data. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we don't only strictly go based off of our quantitative data. By quantitative, I mean, like, for example, the counts. We have cameras on the buses that kind of let us know how many folks are on the bus. We don't only go based off of quantitative, we also go out into the field as well. So yes.
And then could you bring back up that Q84 route and just explain that rush hour service, the rush service? Rush hour.
Sure.
Service, right? Okay.
I can, if that's okay to reshare. So.
Yeah, so the rush route is something that doesn't exist in the network just yet. So there would definitely be a curve in terms of public understanding and education. But this is something that is used in other systems where they have, like Outer Queens, where there just really isn't any rail or rapid transit options to get folks into, more of those connections.
Sure, correct. Thank you, Kay. It's more so I like to in but so much short terms. It's a subway feeder route. So we've often heard from folks in Southeast Queens, Northeast Queens, or just overall, we just want to get to the subway. We want to get to the subway as fast as possible. So we've created a new service type, or proposed a new service type called the rush route.
What does that mean? Does it mean during rush hour, you're gonna not stop at certain locations to make it more efficient?
So it basically means that most of these routes would go to the subway, but it would stop at key destinations, key points where there's perhaps high riderships, or key destinations if there's, for example, a school, and would pick up.
So Karen, I think you're on the phone. Is that true?
No, Karen's in the room.
I'm in the room.
Oh, sorry, I was seeing the light up. So we've had a little trouble explaining this to folks who can't see the map. So like, let's say you live in a community in Outer Queens. The bus is going to make local stops in your community, pick your folks up, and then once it's through the outer reaches, it's going to go nonstop to a rail connection, whether it be subway or railroad. And so that's the rush. It's not actually timed to the rushes in the peak or time of day, but it does a local number of stops and then rushes all those passengers over to the rail connection that they're looking for.
However, under
limited. Right.
However, under each rush route, there will be a local route underneath the rush route for the stops that the rush routes are not making. So it's not like you would overall, hey, a bus is not going to serve my stop. There will be a underlying route underneath the rush routes.
Important distinction.
Will the signage at the bus stops themselves indicate the rush route, what stops those buses will be making?
Correct.
Okay, I mean, this is an improvement over what was proposed 2 years ago, when I think you would have to get off and transfer to the Q25. I think it's just a point that I think that, I just want to remind us that we are 5 boroughs that make up New York City, and it doesn't help to say outer boroughs or outer reaches. People who live in certain places already feel alienated because they don't have subway stations that were promised years ago and were never realized. They may not have good access. So if you really want people to embrace this new plan, and I see that there are some good aspects, think about the rhetoric, think about how you're describing neighborhoods where people already feel that they don't have the best service.
For sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So I've attended a few of these and attended a lot of the before times in-person meetings, which were certainly a sight to behold. And I'm wondering if you're getting the same level of participation at the meetings and in terms of the volume of comments that you're getting.
So I can take that one. We are seeing what we would consider normal attendance for a bus service planning meeting. So no, it does not compare to what we saw in January, February, and early March of 2020. And we think that's a good thing. We got 11,000 comments in 2.5 months because the plan was not what folks wanted, and it's not what they understood. And it did a lot of things that folks didn't understand. There were some really good aspects of that plan that we have carried over here, but we did not go to the full wipe and the brand new network. Folks hated it. I mean, let's be honest. There was 11,000 comments in 2.5 months. That has never happened on any MTA project ever. By comparison, we're averaging, 50 to 80 people each night over the course of the 2 sessions. We've got in something like about 10,000 views on the remix map, but 1,000 comments. So that means people are seeing this and choosing not to leave a comment because it's doing what they want it to do. We've had something like 300,000 social impressions and more like 25,000 engagements in those posts. So the numbers are saying that people early, unassessed, not scientifically, anecdotally, we're seeing that folks are seeing the plan and choosing not to weigh in because it's doing the thing they were hoping it would do. We're still pushing hard to get comments about bus stop spacing and the new routing proposals. Those on the ground eyes, the folks who are at the stop, they see things that no matter how many times we go out and ride the bus, our planners might not see. Maybe there's a sanitation truck that blocks the corner every Wednesday morning. We don't know. And that's the point of sounding this out to the public and getting and asking, begging for the input.
Thank you. Stuart, Marisol. Yeah. Stuart,
go ahead.
Yes, thanks, Lisa. Okay, Fran, so it looks very comprehensive, but working remotely today, it was a little hard. So when you talked about, looking at the Interboro train that maybe someday, and it looks like we're doing some forward planning. When you solicited input, did you work with city planning at all to look and see whether the routes that we're anticipating would take into account new developments, whether they be residential or commercial? Are we looking at that and soliciting that feedback from New York City, not just from riders?
Sure. So for the Interboro Express right now, it's in really in its preliminary.
I'm familiar with that.
Oh, okay.
We're the oversight group.
Oh, okay.
We're very familiar with that. I'm saying that's one example, which was positive, that you gave in the talk about forward thinking. I'm asking if the outreach team, your planning team, consulted with city planning from New York City to talk about whether these planned routes would address future residential developments in Queens or commercial developments in Queens. They're extensively developing Jamaica near York College. I'm saying I can't look at the map holistically, but I'm asking just to have you reached out to city planning?
We have reached out to city planning, and right now we're in, because this is a new draft plan, we will still continue to be working along with all folks. So correct.
Right. So just saying that it's important to capture that
for sure
whatever we're planning takes into account these future developments. Last question.
Sure, but Stuart, to that point, I think it's important to note that we also don't want to be providing service to something that isn't open yet. So we are setting ourselves up for in the Bronx. We're setting ourselves up for future service to the new Metro North stations. In Queens, we are aware of future development, but they're maybe not being served yet. But that's really the beauty of buses versus fixed rail.
Right.
Is when those new developments, institutions, cultural, stakeholders in the community do come online, we'll be able to adjust.
So like areas of the Rockaways are being extensively developed.
That's right.
Downtown Jamaica. I'm just saying that we need to have them in the conversation. That's all I'm saying.
And they have been. Yep.
Yeah.
No,
great.
so that's a great point. And within our underlying data. We use much of city planning's data as well within our maps. Even within Remix, we have several layers, so we do get that that data and any future development. Even along with DOT, we get all that data and we take a look. And even if the data is not up to date, we always touch base with our agencies to see if there's anything that may have, you know, sparked up the day before, that if there's a development coming along. So yes.
Great. And last thing, is there a net gain or a loss in the total number of buses? If this draft plan were to be approved as is, do we have more buses under this scenario or less buses throughout the borough?
Are you referring to buses or like routes? I just want to be clear on that.
Bus routes. Yeah.
So there will actually be a decrease in bus routes, but it would be different service types, if that makes sense.
But,
yeah.
Right, but how many routes are proposed for
go
elimination? It
One
wasn't clear from the chart. You were talking about how they were repurposed, but it wasn't clear what the net loss would be.
So here we have, let me just share my screen. So there would be 18 retired route labels. So 18. So there would be 85 total proposed routes and then 18 retired. So if that answers your question. And most are either new labels or they've been combined with other routes, if that makes sense.
So it's 18. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
But it's not a net loss though, Stuart.
Yeah, it's not a
being
net
combined.
Yeah, it's being combined.
Thank you.
Along with 20 new route labels. So.
Well, that I saw, but
Yeah,
now
yeah.
it's just, okay, 18. Thank you.
Yeah.
I am sorry. I just want to understand a little bit more about these rush routes and how they are connecting to other boroughs. For instance, when you mentioned rush route, I was thinking of the buses that come into the Bronx, because we receive a lot of people going into, let's say, Co-op City and some of the other venues that we have in the borough. And I thought that that was something that would be interesting, given that the one in Co-op City is actually stopping at Pelham Bay Station. So I'm wondering if that's the type of service that you are talking about, or is it something totally different? Because for us in the Bronx, there are a lot of people that are asking for the bus to, instead of stopping at Pelham Bay Station in the Bronx, to continue into Co-op, since that is where a lot of their relatives are residing. And these are elderly people that need either some kind of checking in. So I just wondered if you can explain the rush a little bit more. And how is that very different from SBS?
Sure. So the SBS types, they're more so east to west. And it's meant more so for Crosstown. Whereas as the rush routes, it's more so connecting folks to subways, but there would be an underlying local route underneath, and it would only make certain there would only be certain transfer points. So yeah, most of the SBS routes run Crosstown, whereas the rush routes, think of it as small segments just to and from connecting like neighborhoods which are considered with respect transit deserts.
Okay, can you give me an example of one of these rush routes coming into the Bronx?
So it's not something we proposed for the Bronx Marathon.
Yeah, not for the Bronx.
It is a new service type, as Francisca said, that we are introducing for consideration in Queens. There are huge portions of Queens. The underlying network of subways in the Bronx is a little bit more borough-wide than in Queens. So this is looking to the most eastern parts of Queens where there are no rails and no subways, but we know by origin and destination data that folks do want to get to the rapid transit. So it's a different need than we saw when we did the same analysis in the Bronx.
Can I, it seems to me,
thank you.
To me, it sounds analogous to the buses at the airport where they go from terminal, and then they take you to the subway. And it sounds to me like this is an analogous, G of that, only it's going to some different local stops and then to the subway. Is that correct?
Express.
Yeah.
Okay, Deborah Grice.
Thank you. Okay, the one issue I want to bring up, and this happens more in Queens than even in Brooklyn, and I'll use the example of Flushing. The bus lines are so long. People waiting to get on the buses. And once they get one bus filled up, it goes out. But people with disabilities who use walkers or wheelchairs, we barely can get on those buses. We always have a hard time. Now, I understand, we do know there are people with hidden disabilities, but are you taking into account that the seniors or people with disabilities need to also get on those buses, and that when we try to get on, we have a hard time? The other thing is that some of your bus stops out in Eastern Queens, and it's also in parts of Staten Island, don't have real sidewalks. So if you make a longer distance of a bus stop that is not completely accessible, and you skip the accessible one, that doesn't, or take that away, that doesn't help. Please check the terrains also of where the stops are in Queens. Please check for curb cuts, because many times we have the hardest time getting on the buses. And yes, I have traveled on almost every bus route in Queens, not even before when I started to have to use a wheelchair. My late mother, we did that so she wouldn't have to go upstairs, because then there weren't too many elevators. But I'm not the only person with disabilities. So I'm just asking you, please be more aware of this. It's very rough for us. Thank you.
No, thank you so much for that, Deborah, and that's a good point. When we're taking a look at these bus stops, again, we have taken a look into the quantitative data, but we also take a look into Google Maps, and we pair up with DOT, who actually owns the street walk and any curb cuts. And if there is a bus shelter or any amenities that would assist with commutes, especially for in any ADA structure that's already there, we try to just keep that bus stop because the infrastructure is already there.
Please
So,
also ask people with disabilities to go out with you. Please
For
don't just rely on DOT.
Okay, for sure.
Many times they have not helped us the way they should.
No, thank you so much for that, Deborah, and we will note that.
Jason?
Thank you. Thank you, Ann.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Jason.
Hi, Fran. Hey, Kate. Jason Anthony from Amazon Labor Union. I have several concerns here. I have seen the draft plan, and I definitely have to raise a red flag here. Yes, I have to agree that the buses have to be redesigned. But as a Brooklyn resident, some Brooklyn residents will be affected by this bus redesign, especially those who live at Carroll Gardens. Because as the draft plan that as is, the B57 will be cutted. And if the plan is approved as is, you have residents in Cobble Hill and Carroll Gardens that are part of Community Board 2 of Brooklyn, being very concerned and very angry. And here's why. Because the B57 route as of right now goes along Court Street, southbound, and on Smith Street, northbound. And the closest accessible subway station is J Street Metrotech. So you don't have no accessible station south of J Street Metrotech.
So Jason,
Yes,
Jason, we know. And if you said you've seen the plan, we clearly stated in the plan that there will be ample opportunity for our Brooklyn communities and customers to weigh in before any of the interborough routes go forward. And so some of that mapping in Brooklyn is not finalized. I mean, none of this is finalized, but so exactly so we can go to our Brooklyn communities next when we get to the Brooklyn draft plan, and we get to work with those communities as well on their needs. We are not doing anything on the street until we have heard from
Kate,
Queens and Brooklyn.
But Kate, my opinion is that any interborough routes that go between Queens and Manhattan and Queens and Brooklyn shouldn't be touched until the other borough is studied.
Jason, that's exactly what I just said.
Jason, that's
Except
just,
for
Jason,
those who
that's
go
what Kate just said.
between Queens and the Bronx.
Jason,
And
that's,
why?
Jason, that's what Kate just said is gonna happen.
And it's in the report, in black and white.
And why?
That's what she just said.
And
But
my
if
last
you have-
point, and my last point here is why you guys haven't considered extending the BX41 select bus service to LaGuardia Airport, leaving those who live in the South Bronx without a direct route to LaGuardia Airport. As part of the Bronx redesign, because now those who live on the 2 and the 5 and
We
the
have to
South
let her
Bronx.
answer. We have to move on. We have to let her answer. And we have one more question. We have another rest of the meeting.
All right.
So we've gotten lots of different suggestions for how to provide better service to LaGuardia. At this time, our analyses show that the best trip for most customers in the Bronx, including those in the South Bronx, is to take the subway to the M60 or a different travel path to the Q70. Space is limited. Extending something like the BX41 SBS is very expensive. However, if you think that is a great idea, please submit it through either the comment portal for the webpage or onto Remix, because again, this is a draft plan. There will be no changes until we publish the proposed final plan. I think some folks have missed that in the conversation. Like, we are taking all this feedback, but you will not see changes from us until we come back with the next iteration of the plan. But it's all coming into our team. We are taking a look at everything seriously. Travel patterns are changing. The pandemic has affected how New Yorkers move, how Queens residents move. So all feedback is good feedback. But, you know, assuming that we're not going to do something or stating that we haven't done it sort of misses the point of this being a draft for public conversation. Because that feedback is important.
That's great, thank you.
Time for one more question. Well, we've got 3 more, but I have to do this next part of.
I'm so sorry, Lisa. If you want to send us anything in writing after the fact, we'll do our best to respond. I know that this is a hot topic and important to the members.
These guys have to go too. We had Charlton had his hand raised before. Charlton is next, but these guys also have to go then.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just want to say Kate is doing a great job, Kate Coutinho, on this project. She's working very hard and responding to a lot of questions. We do appreciate you, Kate, and the whole Queens Bus Redesign team. I do have some concerns. Some of the senior citizens told me last night when they were calling 511, it wasn't taking them through to submit a comment on the Queens Bus Redesign. So you might want to look into that. Also with the Remix application, when you're trying to make a suggestion on Remix on an Apple iMac computer, it's crashing. Even on an iPad, when you try to do it on an iPad Pro, it's crashing. So that's something you might want to look at. And we're getting at Passengers United, you know, our team, we're getting a lot of concerns about the Q41 bus in Queens, the Q38 bus. We're also getting concerns about the route that Jason just mentioned from the Bronx to the airport. Also, there's been concerns about College Point. And we are hosting a seminar in College Point on June 6th from 6:30 to 8:30. So we hope everyone can join. But what I want to know is this, with these bus stops being eliminated, and this is something that Deborah had mentioned, my concern and the concern of Passengers United members are, we just want to make sure, because, the bus stop eliminations look good on a piece of paper, but what happens in the winter time when it's snowing and it's icy? And so we need to make sure there's also bus shelters in the, on the new stops, so that people are not waiting in a very narrow area, but there's also those bus shelters. And then the other concern is, the hospital routes, which is something that we've been looking at. There's no route that goes from Great Neck, LIJ, all the way to the other side to Far Rockaway in Queens. So, I feel like we want it to be innovative, this bus redesign. So you should be able to go from LIJ and shoot right across Queens to Far Rockaway, like a limited route that does that. And I drew a map out for you, Kate, and I'll send that to you. And also we need a route that goes from like Astoria to Jamaica. Something like that is innovative because it's a time saver. I know we have the subway, but we need night owl bus routes, because a lot of seniors are telling me they feel afraid to take the subway overnight. So I know we're pressed for time, but these are my general concerns. And also in this plan, we need to consider senior centers and medical places, because the complaints we're getting about the express bus routes is the frequency of an hour and 90 minutes. And that's unacceptable midday, because a lot of us have doctor's appointments and things like that. So I just want to end my comments there because I know we're pressed for time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charlton. I took notes. We will look into the 511 issue because that's not acceptable. You should be able to just call up 511 and leave your comment, and it'll ultimately get routed to our team. The rest of it you've shared with us in the past, and we'll look into it.
In regards to the remix, have you been able to use an actual computer desktop? Because I do know remix is still, it doesn't work best via mobile, like if you're on your phone, but if you are on an actual desktop computer, you should be able to input your comments.
Well, my neighbor and I on my iMac at home, it crashed. Remix was crashing. And so then I asked other people and they were having the same issue. So I don't know if, maybe so there has to be a better way for us maybe to submit, those things on that. That would be helpful.
That's why there's a comment portal. And Remix is best in class for what it does for planning tools, but we have a great relationship with the vendor, so we can take this back. Thank you.
Oh, and Kate, I have a quick question. Is there any application where you? I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. We have, okay, Carl, and then we have Mr. X, and we've got a.
Yeah, my question is there any update to the transfer policy? I know that under this plan and the Bronx plan, people are going to need additional transfers, and people going from a local to an SBS and then to a subway.
Yes,
transfers,
it's being programmed in. So several years ago, our board passed a supplement to allow for additional three-legged transfers when it was required by changes that we made. And so there are a slew of three-legged transfers being programmed for our Bronx customers, especially those who use the BX15, the M125, and the M100. Those are going to be the most predominant three-legged transfers created. We are still working on the Omni programming for that, but our fundamental philosophy here is that no rider should have to pay an additional fare for changes made through this initiative. So far, we have not had to go to the board for specific changes because it is a tariff situation and it is within the board's control. We've been able to use it through the policies that are already in place, but rest assured that if that does become necessary through one of our proposals, when we get to the final stages, the team does have to take this to the board anyway. We would fight for those authorizations, but for now, we're able to provide them within the rules that have already been laid out.
Okay, I understand about the tariff rules. I just want to know if they could come up with a general policy like Nice Bus already allows 2 transfers, and that's only 1 county. We're dealing with 5 counties, 5 boroughs. So I thought
So
they
our the
follow-
majority of our numbers
allow us
show
to
that our customers are not going bus to subway. In the instances where they have to, then those transfers are programmed in. If there are specific ones that you think are missing, you can share that with Lisa and we'll take a look.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Direct.
Read the bottom. The exit's right here.
Is that it?
No, one more.
One more.
Thank you.
Okay.
So, if you want to be successful, you want this to be successful, you, leaving Queens, some buses, many bus routes should run to Brooklyn and my borough, particularly my borough. There are only 2 buses running between Queens and my borough, which is inexcusable. Okay, that's disrespectful and inexcusable. It's annoying, it's disturbing. Okay, why are we treated like leftovers? Why are we treated like stereotypes, much like JJ from Good Times? You have something against my borough? That's the impression I'm getting. You treated my borough like 40 Patchett in Bronx, 1981. Paul Newman. Let's get it together. I understand this is the Queens Bus Redesign Plan, but there should be many buses running between there and Brooklyn, between there and my borough. This way, we can avoid this one.
Great.
I don't
Thank you
feel
for
I
that
should leave
input.
my borough. Hold on. I don't feel I should leave my borough. If I'm trying to do my borough and Astoria, okay, there's a way I could do it without entering this borough, but I have to take a long route. And you're telling me I have to ride the train? Forget it. I want to board the bus in my borough, anywhere in my borough, and take it straight to Astoria without entering this borough, without boarding a train. So if you could reinstate, what was the big 24 bus that ran between my borough and Astoria until the 1980s, that would be glad to appreciate it, because all you have to do is let it originate at Yankee Stadium, the 2 Yankee Stadium stations, which are wheelchair accessible, let it go to Deegan Expressway, across the Tri-Road Bridge, to Astoria Boulevard Station, which is also wheelchair accessible. There's no reason why you can't do it. It doesn't have to terminate there, but it could operate between those 2 points at all times. You can collect more money, you get some more revenue, you get more satisfaction like the Rolling Stones, you get more satisfaction like Trish Stratus. Okay? You shake things up like Vince McMahon.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks for that input. Well, thank you, everyone. There's been some wonderful questions and some great ideas shared today. We do appreciate you taking so much time to talk with us about bus service in Queens.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you. Okay. We now move from Queens Bus Redesign to the next, to bicycle pedestrian access. So we've spoken before about the work that PCAC has been legislatively charged with, which is to create a new recommendations to the MTA that improve bicycle and pedestrian access to MTA facilities. At our PCAC meeting next week, we will be voting on a set of recommendations to present to the MTA as we are, as is part of that mandate. So what I'm going to do today is give you a quick presentation on what the MTA is looking at, that will then just funnel into a quick conversation about what some of the recommendations that the staff have put together about bicycle, predominantly bicycle access to MTA facilities, and then look to you for your input so that we can include those into our recommendations. And what I'm going to do, and what I'm going to attempt to do, is to share my screen. I am here. Okay, great. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview of what what the MTA's plan is. All right, here we go. So the MTA is required to to develop a strategic plan for bicycle pedestrian access by the end of next year. We are required, PCAC is required to submit a plan to the MTA by June 1st. We have collectively agreed that since PCAC needs to vote on it, our meeting is on June 2nd, that's the date that they will receive it. This goes over what the legislation is. Our recommendations will be folded into the MTA's plan, we believe. There'll be more opportunity for comment in the coming weeks and months ahead. You'll see on this slide the growth in cycling over the last number of years, just shy of 10 years. And particularly during the pandemic, or between 2019 and 2020, there was a 33% increase in biking at select locations. Almost 200 million cycling trips estimated in 2019 in New York City alone. So the MTA's core planning principles in this exercise will be to focus on transportation equity, proactive stakeholder engagement, and integrative planning that look at the number of different pedestrian, bicycle, and micro-mobility access that are included in its operational and capital construction project planning processes on an ongoing basis. The initial strategies that they're looking to for evaluation, you guys are really distracting me. No passing notes unless you want us all to read them out loud. Thank you. So the initial strategies for evaluation that they will be looking at are bicycle scooter access at subway stations and bus stops. That obviously includes working with DOT that owns the land around on the city streets and manages that property. Bike scooter access to Long Island Railroad and Metro North stations. And Karen, this is going to we'll go into bicycles and scooters and e-scooters and e-mopeds, et cetera, as part of this little additional conversation, integrating bike sharing services and access of pedestrian and bike scooters, e-mopeds, et cetera, on MTA bridges. This legislation was in large ways mobilized by the bicycle community, which has a large voice and which got this legislation passed. And in large part, our understanding is that their efforts were driven, as it were, by the interest in wanting to improve accessibility for bicycles over the bridges. So this is the MTA's timeline, and they'll give us more of an overview when they talk to us next Thursday about the publication of their website and their materials. We are now in Q2. Yeah, almost Q3, where they're looking at gap analysis, and they've begun their engagement with different agencies, partners, and advocates. We've had some opening conversations, but a more robust conversation will be coming. So I'm not going to take questions at this moment. What I'm going to do is
Take them now?
no. What I'm going to do is talk a little bit about some of the recommendations that we've collectively as staff come up with. Some of these are taken from what the MTA has, building upon, including what the MTA has developed, and they'll be built out more. We're not issuing them a report. We're issuing them some talking points with content. And these will be, the ones I'm going to talk about today are the ones we've really developed for Transit Riders Council. We've met with both of the commuter councils so far and had these similar conversations and presentations with them. And we will compile the information we get today with the information we've gotten from them and get it to you in advance of PCAC, at which time we'll vote on it and then share it with the MTA as our input as mandated. So there are 7. I'm going to ask if you could just hear me out, and then we can have a conversation. I'm going to put enforcement aside as a separate conversation because it's something that's come up in each of the councils. 1 is explore ways to improve secure bicycle storage at, near, and around transit stations. 2 is roll out Omni to City Bike, other bike share programs, and explore potential creative fare options, including transfers between transit and those bike share companies. I want to say City Bike because that's what's in effect right now. 3, improve coordination with DOT so that bikes and buses do not conflict with each other on the street, including by separating bus lanes from bike lanes. It could mean on different streets or avenues so that there's ample room for buses and bikes and car traffic and parking. 4, study bus routes that may benefit from having bike racks on the front of buses, such as that goes over the Verrazano now, including buses that go over bridges that do not have bicycle access. 5, establish, enforce, and communicate bicycle rules of conduct on transit, including banning bikes with motors and electric bikes, size limitations, and limited hours for bikes on trains. 6, expand street-level real-time subway screens near all stations, but also on city bike docks near subway stations. 7, as the MTA rolls out new neighborhood-level detailed maps at stations, consider adding some major bike lanes. Yeah, as the MTA rolls out new neighborhood-level detailed maps at stations, add the major bike lanes that are in the area onto those maps.
You mean the community maps that show
Yeah,
certain
show where the right.
museums? No, but also show.
Yes, show the local streets for your,
Yeah,
it didn't read it, see it in my head.
I thought that's what you
Yeah,
meant, but I
so
wanted to
like
make
show where
sure.
the bike shares are, show where the bike routes are, and the bike lanes are. We'll make that sound like it says.
So I didn't understand 6.
Sure, 6 is, so, you know, if you're at a city bike dock, which many of us have passed, to put the subway time, so you can see what time the next train is. So you can decide whether you're gonna bike to the next place, or you're going to dock and go down. I also think that it would be.
Cost, I think, to get the,
Yeah, well, I'd like it at the entrance to my subway station also. So, you know, expand that so that, expand the bike.
But there also has to be consultation with the community
Well,
where they
yes.
are, because there's
Right.
a big brouhaha on my block.
Right, yep.
Where they just put it there.
Hold on. So, so that is about the screens near all stations, but also at the city bike location. So, I mean, these are talking points that we want to raise, and Sharon, you have your hand raised.
Can I make a comment on one of them?
Yes.
Instead of limiting hours, which I think would be very tricky, possibly there could be a designated car for vehicles, you know, other vehicles that people could also, pedestrians could also ride on, but at least it would put them all in one place.
You're talking on trains or subway?
I'm sorry, subway.
Like a designated bicycle?
Like the first car would always be if you were gonna bring a vehicle and people would stand in it if they wanted to, but at least it would.
Well, why don't we look to see if that's in effect anywhere, and if it is.
Yeah, we've actually looked at that. Can't remember the railroad, but in Florida, they have actual bicycle decals on the car trains themselves. And there's other places where they have them on the platform, where you know that that's where you board with your bike.
But that's a railroad, it's not a mass transit like
Right, I know, but we're looking at those examples and seeing how that could be contextualized to the subway and to the commuter rails here.
Loading them on local buses is very time consuming. I mean, it really would affect the schedules, I would think. You know, having a rack on the local bus, that happens in Florida, where we have them. Yep.
So that would be, so the recommendation we would make would be for the MTA to study it,
Yeah.
rather than to just implement it. We have the ability to say study. They have the obligation to actually study. We have it easier than that. Christopher and then Karen? Thank you, Sharon.
The one thing I'm just gonna add with, Sharon saying, is you did have a pilot on the Staten Island bus.
That's in effect, yeah.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, it was once the person put the bike on, it was a 1, 2, 3. So
Okay,
it
well,
is, that's something that, whatever the device they're using, it's actually a little better than New Jersey's, because New Jersey's, forget it, it broke. And the only thing you can see is flying bicycles. But now, there is one concern that I'm looking at your questions, Lisa, but there's one thing that on the Long Island Railroad, I'm gonna use right now, has, like, when it comes to be rush hour, no bicycles are really supposed to be on there, because the one problem that we're gonna have, and as Sharon showed the picture. Karen, I'm sorry, Sharon, I'm a little, I'm drained today, so let's, forgive me if I'm glitchy, right now. The main focus is, the bicycles need to remind, this is also on any of the railroads, that where they're supposed to be parking or where they're supposed to secure it, they're not securing it correctly. Second, a walker, wheelchair, because I know,
This is the enforcement part. I just want to put that aside for a second.
but the enforcement right now, they're not enforcing.
I understand that. That's why, that's a okay, so, since you raised it, the Long Island Railroad and Metro North, rules of conduct are, each of the councils has voted to update their code of conduct for the railroads, because they have been, last updated in whole in 2008. Their bicycle codes of conduct have been updated more recently. But we think that they should be, the councils have agreed, and that they should be more prominently displayed. And that would then give the personnel on the trains the ability to enforce them better. There is no signage right now, so that's what those councils are doing. We need to have the people who are doing the enforcing, give them the tools that they need.
I was just gonna, Lisa, you took the words out of my
We've
mouth.
spoken with them, and they need the tools that they need.
The only thing else I gotta add in is the Long Island Cares need that also, because they are trained, and I'm using them as an example because when I was going on a train from Jamaica, you had bicycles, which they were not secured, and lucky for us, Long Island Care was there, they had to tell them whose bicycles are these, because this is a rush hour train, you cannot really be where you're supposed to. They took them, and they moved them to somewhere else, and that walker, that wheelchair got a chance to get on, including a service animal.
Right,
And
so
that
we'll make sure that enforcement is a separate, point, okay? Thank you. Karen?
Yeah, so a couple of things. One, I was gonna say that means, MTA will have to make different purchasing decisions in order to ensure that there's space for bicycles and a lot of these, e-scooters and so forth in the future if they, whatever decision is, rendered. If you wanna have them on those buses, you wanna make sure we're getting the best storage where that's gonna take place at these stations as well. Or we're gonna encourage more use or rental or sharing of bikes, so we don't have to worry about those things. So that would be another thing.
Okay, I just wanna, the E issue is, right now, they're not supposed to be in the system, but they are. So that, there needs to be a sort of, a come to enforcement moment of how to manage that. One of the major issues is fire and safety. So, in some of the ways that have been, they've been looked at nationally is whether they're UL listed, which provides a greater degree of safety, but nobody's gonna sit there and look at batteries, right? So, it's a major issue that has an even more major enforcement implications. We're not saying that they should be on buses, and gasoline is absolutely should be like no. In terms of buses, for bicycles and putting them on front, that was my question. Do we need to buy all new buses? But they're add-ons. It's a piece of, add-on equipment.
But you're limited to how many bicycles you can put on at a time, and so that's what I'm saying, you may have to think about a different type of bus, maybe it's a different configuration for bicycles.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So that's, it's part of the capital.
And then the other thing I was gonna mention was, I'm fine with everything that's there, especially the last one. Again, those common suggestions are all relegated to communities that have those things.
Right.
And so there are large swatches of, you know, the city that are not included, and I know outer reaches of Queens, Eastern Queens, like, there's this bike lane, and then it like disappears, and then it comes up again. And so it would be great to connect, because you know what? People may bike, and they may want to bike to the city, they may want to bike to other areas, they want to bike to Long Island. I mean, let's link it, let's get people out there, and then, you know what, maybe there will be someone else, maybe that city bike will say, you know what, maybe we could have a different type of bike share in some of those communities, but we at least need to be including everyone.
I want to add, better bike lane connectivity, and then I'm going to put this in quotation marks, in transit desert. Trudy.
Yeah, can I just add on to what Karen is saying, because I don't think if I made it clear before, but anywhere that you are suggesting, you said about having the bike rental stations, what are they, I don't know what.
The city bike, we'll call that.
Yeah, but there are now other companies that
Yeah,
are doing it.
bike share.
Yeah, that, you're suggesting that they be located near subway stations, and I'm saying that any suggestion that we make about the location of those bike rental stations has to be in consultation, and that has to be with the local community, because that has been that was so much of an issue when City Bike just started. All of a sudden they arrived.
Yep.
And all of a sudden half of the block was taken up. And then especially with the restaurant things, you can't, there are some places, especially in Midtown Manhattan or on the Upper East Side, where you literally cannot navigate to walk from one corner to the other. So please use those words, in consultation with the local community.
Yep, I'm putting that down.
In terms of any placement.
Thank you.
Lisa?
Yes.
Also adding on to what Karen was saying in a way, is the entrance, how you handle the entrance and exit of these implements on the subway, because they are one of the great ways for people to, use the slam gates, because the bike comes in and opens the gate, and then everybody takes advantage of the open slam gate.
Right. Yep. Yes. Right.
It's an invitation.
Oh. Right. Okay, did somebody, Marisol?
Hi, I just had a quick question. How are you addressing the privately owned bicycles and e-scooters? These are for bike shares, but how will those people that have their bikes and their scooters, how is that going to be addressed? Is it going to be different? I mean,
Right, no, that's, so we've been talking about City Bike, but this is really for people, it's for every bike or scooter. So that's the reason for more bicycle parking, more bike parking near, in consultation with local communities near subway stations, not just City Bike, but more bike corrals. There's a new thing called the Unipod that they put in near Grand Central. There's one in Union Square. It exists. There's some, they're testing them, I think, on Long Island as well. I was actually just out at a conference where a new station was built, and this could be something that, is considered with Penn Access, but I didn't say this, where they built a bike corral for 400 bicycles, because that's the predominant way that people get to that particular station. And that would be privately managed as part of the agreement with the station manager, or with the property adjacent to it. in the city, there was some, I don't know, if it was a requirement, or an agreement or an encouragement for bicycle parking. It's a requirement for bicycle parking in garages, and in buildings. So that, maybe that needs to be, reconsidered, and reinforced. That again is permitted. I think during the pandemic, that went away. But that reimagining bike parking in public buildings and in office buildings, public buildings, and in garages is something that needs to again be looked at.
Anything else on this topic?
But Marisol, that's where the enforcement issues of somebody has an e-motorbike and they don't want to leave it someplace, so they take it on the train with them. They don't. It's not that they don't want to leave it there; it's that they don't have any place to leave it.
Rex?
Thanks.
Yeah.
I did mention this before. That's my fault. On these bicycles, all types, if they can ride them, they can bring them, they can ride them. They don't need to board the buses and the trains with them, Signet train. Because when they board the trains with them, it's hard for us to move around. We have to dance like a rockhead. Some of us are thin, some of us aren't. Okay, my waist size is between 44 and 48, so obviously I'm not thin. Okay, I'm not a rockhead. I don't dance like a rockhead. I don't dress like a rockhead. Okay, I can't wear pants that
Understood.
Under size 44 because that'll cut my blood circulation.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying?
I do.
We got that picture. If they can bring,
I'm never going to forget that picture.
if they can bring the bicycles, I mean,
Right.
with the way I say, they should buy the bicycle and leave them home. That's what I should say. Buy the bicycle and leave them home. Because don't need to bring them everywhere to go. Because, like I said, I mean.
So that's the point that other people have made. But the problem is that if you don't have a place to park it, then you're not going to just leave it on the street. So that's why some of the recommendations are.
Okay, some of the travel on the system, but some of it is to avoid longer journeys. They take it on a freight train and then they start riding again.
Right, so this is the conversation, understood, but this is the conversation that we is not going to be included in our plan. So because we have a limited amount of time, 4 minutes, I'd like to include things that we can include.
And we need to get the new and old business.
Hold on, Andrew, Kurzweil?
Yeah.
My concern is like, weather conditions. Like, you have lane closures because of wind on Verrazano, you've had it with, Whitestone, the Frog Neck, at times and stuff. And, how do you, and a bike, it's just, kind of,
They'd be subject to the same, rules.
Oh, I understand that to a point, but I'm looking at it in terms of all about safety and everything, and I'm like, in certain places, it just doesn't make sense.
Absolutely, and that's 100%, and that's why we're not making a recommendation to put a bike lane on the Verrazano. Eric, did you have your hand raised? No, okay. We have 2 minutes. Did anybody, Charlton, that's his hand up?
Yes, good afternoon. My concern is, those heavy bikes, they bring them in the elevators for the ADA disabled. And then what happens is the weight of the bike, sometimes people come on with 2 bikes, it can cause damage to the elevator. Is that being looked at?
That's
all I had to say.
Yeah, so that's something, that is another issue that we'll put in as well. Thank you.
Anything else on this topic?
Okay, thank you so much. So we'll get this out to the members in advance of PCAC. Thank you. This is a good conversation, appreciate it.
We have a small amount of time for old and new business. Old business?
Old business.
Let me look at members first. Any members? No.
Okay.
Go ahead.
The old business, I first raised when Andy Byford spoke here, so we know it's dated. The restrooms on the Transit Authority stations still are locked.
That's right.
And the restrooms on MTA facilities are still open. And it's the same virus in both rooms. So why are we discriminating against the New York City people, but the Long Island Railroad and Metro North people?
So that was raised.
Free to go wherever they want.
That was raised at yesterday's meeting, again, and the answer was that that transit does not have enough cleaners
Security.
or
And
security.
homeless was also damaging them too. That was mentioned the following meeting.
I would say, they ask that every month.
I think these are just excuses.
No.
Because Sheepshead Bay Road subway station has
Stewart.
nice bathrooms, have never or rarely been vandalized, and they're happy to keep them locked.
You know, there are still some days when if you look on the service status, you'll see we're running as much service as we can with the crews we have available. So they're definitely short on people still.
In the Daily News today, Lisa, your quote, if you didn't know it.
You saw it. Stewart has his hand raised.
Stewart.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Andrew. Did we ever get any updated information on station or car cleaning schedules or frequencies of cleaning?
We didn't, but I was trying to get the head of stations to come to today's meeting and was unsuccessful in doing that. But it's coming, Stuart, I promise.
Okay, because we still see disparities between lines when it comes to the R46s versus the IRT fleet. And certainly with the presentation that we had that was vague about station cleaning, I think we still need an answer.
Yep.
Andrew, for information, because the backup steward and everyone else, there was also reported in Transit 34 that homeless was also damaging the bathrooms at Kings Highway, Sheepshead Bay, and don't let me start with Brighton Beach now.
Don't start with it, we do not have time.
I'm being
Seriously.
quick.
No.
And I just said,
But
the damage.
we've just had this conversation. I'm sorry, we're over our time.
We're gonna have to vacate the room, so we have to move on. Old business.
Mr.
Rex?
Old business. Complain about that, that's a matter of, how many get to do this?
Business, Christopher has new business.
Yes, Sharon.
Have they increased the speed of the subways?
Yes. Various places. Unfortunately, all the weekend geos going on and people working on the tracks, trains are going much more slow than normal, going by work zones as a union safety requirement.
And to follow up on the Grand Central elevators, is there any report on when they're finally gonna be operable
That's
after
a good
6
question.
months?
Don't have an update on that, but I'll get it for you.
The sign, I can't remember the date, but I know the sign into the station, the one
I think
the,
it says May, I don't know.
We
Sharon,
got a week.
How can it take that long?
We got a week to go. It's also inspection.
We'll get it back.
I'll
We'll get it back to you.
I'll talk to you.
New business?
I do, and I'll be quick if I don't get interrupted. This is also for Caitlin. I know that in July.
Kate is gone.
I don't know how to catch it, but I'm just saying for record. You've also been hearing that they're getting ready to shut the Q train down during the weekday, on the weekends. And they're running the Q also running on the Sea Beach, 4th Avenue, or West End. Can we find out if they're gonna run express on the West End and the Sea Beach line during the summer? Because they're saying they're running one set of Q during the weekend summer to the beach season to Coney Island.
Can you ask that again? Is the Q gonna run express? Is that-
Okay.
On another line.
Okay.
On another line, because they have the Q on weekends running in two sections. One is a shuttle from Prospect Park to Stillwell, which is the regular Brighton line. The real one will run on the 4th Avenue Corridor Express, but the question is once it goes to the D or the N line, are they gonna run express or local? That's the question I need to know.
Well, the inference is they're doing work north of Prospect Park Station on the Q line.
Yes, and I know they're doing signal work, which they need to do. oh my God, they need to do it.
Okay, we'll find out.
That quick?
Quick, Mr. X?
Okay. I stated on the railroad, schedules are unavailable. Well, Lakeville Station, Penn Station. I didn't see the schedule when I saw this. So they can post the schedule, but they can post this. Are you serious?
So they,
Or we can't spend them like Big Daddy Kane?
so they've told me that they may print some limited number of schedules after the summer.
Okay. Are we can't spend them like Big Daddy Kane?
Okay. That's what I've been told. And Charlton, I think, is gonna take us home.
Go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, the shuttle buses in Brooklyn on 4th Avenue, people are telling me they're waiting 20 to 25 minutes for a shuttle bus at night. And the buses are very crowded. I was on them. I did a video. It's horrible. People are not wearing masks, and people are late to work in the morning. So, Andrew, can you please get that situation with operations planning worked out? Thank you. And some empty buses are leaving. When the people are coming upstairs, the bus is already gone, empty.
Talking about the R train shuttle buses?
Yes.
Yes, to Bay Ridge.
Okay, I'll find
And
out.
vice versa, coming back. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, we can now.
The meeting be adjourned.
Second.
We have, Eric, one more
But
question.
Andrew, can I just ask, the 13 ride passes, do they expire on Saturday or Sunday, or they expire 7 days after you buy them?
No, they expire on Sundays.
Okay.
That's if you use your Omni. If you just
Omni, of
swiping with your Metro card, it's from when you start to when you're done.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And
that
if it's
was
Omni, it's,
confusing.
you have to use the same card or thing. Yeah.
Thank you.